Now, Props and Locks on Fox 32 Chicago, presented by Bet Rivers Sportsbook.
Good Sunday morning and welcome to Props and Locks. I'm Caitlin Sharkey. Each week we sort through the best bets and odds of the biggest games of the week, courtesy of Bet Rivers Sportsbook. Joining me every Sunday morning, host of VSiN Rush Hour, Danny Burke. Good morning, Danny, and let's kick things off, of course, with the Bears and Colts. Lots of changes in the NFL this weekend, including the game time between these two was noon. Now it's 3:25 due to the Patriots and Chiefs game being postponed. Bears the 3-point underdog at home despite being 3-0 to start the season. Over under at 43. Danny, what do we like for this one?
Well, Caitlin, we saw this one open up at a pick'em. So neck and neck is where this one opened up between the Colts and the Bears. And then all the attention went toward Indianapolis. So for a majority of the week, the Colts were a 2.5-point favorite. Now, currently, we see the Colts as a 3-point favorite, minus 165 on the money line, plus 143 for the Bears on the money line at home. So potentially some good value on Chicago. And this total opened up at 45. This has dropped down to 43. So some people thinking this is going to be more of a lower scoring affair. Look, when I see this game, I kind of agree with what all the action we're seeing at the Des Plaines Bet Rivers Sportsbook, which is 80% of the bets on the Bears naturally, and that's attributing for about 81% of the handle. And I get it. I understand it. And taking the bias out of it, and I've been fading the Bears multiple times this year, and it hasn't worked out, but I think this is a good spot to back the Bears. You're getting it at the key number of 3, and I'm not too convinced on this Colts team so far. They lost to the Jags in Week 1. Now, I know that could have been a fluke, and they get a big win against Minnesota. I understand it, but look, I'm still not convinced on Old Man Rivers. I think that this Bears defensive front is going to get to him. They have a good offensive line. It's just only a matter of time before Khalil Mack and company are able to get to Rivers. I think that's going to catch up at some point. I think that Foles magic is still going to be looming around. They now know to expect Nick, so it's a little bit different. But look, I would take the 3 with the Bears, but my best bet would be to tease up Chicago like we talk about. You can either tease them up 6, 6.5, or 7 points, and you got to pair it with another team, which we'll discuss later. But you get it through the key number of 3, obviously, and then through 7. I think that's the best angle to go with this game between the Bears and the Colts today, Caitlin.
You touched on it a little bit. Obviously, Nick Foles making his starting debut for the Bears. I like the Bears at home, given the fact that the way they've started this season, they've obviously been the comeback kids. Why do you think the spread kind of went the way it did?
I think it's just a lot of recency bias really is what it is when it comes down to it. I think because everybody gets fascinated, being the public, myself included, gets fascinated with Nick Foles, so they think that Nick Foles' magic is still going to loom, and the sharps look the other way and think, okay, all the public is going to be on Chicago because at the same time the Colts haven't necessarily proven themselves. But, I mean, have the Bears really either? They had been struggling and coming from behind in every single game besides the Giants, but they almost blew that one. So it's just one of those things where I think people are kind of, meaning the sharps, are just fading the Bears still and thinking Nick Foles isn't going to make that much of an impact. But look, you're at that key number 3. I think you got to take advantage of it in this spot with the Bears.
Absolutely. Moving on to the Texans and Vikings. Both teams 0-3, but the Texans laying 3.5, over under at 53.5. Houston dealing with a tough schedule to start. Is this where they finally turn things around? How are we placing our bets here?
Yeah, this one opened at 3.5, Caitlin, and it went up to 4 at some spots, and now it's back down to 3.5. The total at 53.5 for this spot, too. This is kind of a toss-up for me because, like you said, both two teams that have struggled to find a win thus far. The angle that I would actually look at in the lean that I have is Texans first half. So you can get it laying 2.5 with Houston, so you're under that key number of 3. We know that Minnesota's been dreadful at getting out to hot starts so far this season, and granted, so have the Texans. But I think this is really a prime opportunity for Deshaun Watson and company to get off to a good start, get a key win for the squad. I would lean the way of Houston in the game, but really I think the best angle would be that banking on Houston to get off to a hot start, laying the 2.5 in the first half against the Vikings. And look, we talked about it last week. Third time was the charm finally for Minnesota, who covered the spread. I don't really trust them too much this week, but the Sharps are thinking that they could cover. That's why you saw it bump down from 4 to 3.5. But I'm only flirting with the first half and laying the 2.5 with Houston against Minnesota.
Yeah, I like Houston in this one. Next up, a tale of lopsided point spreads. Big underdogs in this one. The Ravens visiting the Washington football team. Baltimore favored by 14. And the Giants visiting the Rams as a 13.5-point underdog. When you see spreads like these ones, what's the best way to go about placing your bet?
This is just really tough to look at because it's so high at this point, like you said, Caitlin, and we're seeing so much money go toward Baltimore naturally. It's just fading Washington, and you're coming off a tough loss being the Ravens against the Chiefs, potentially a great bounce-back opportunity, so I get it. I understand it. And we talk about the teasers. Now, this isn't necessarily the one where it's successful numbers historically because it's so high, but you can even tease them all the way up for Washington if you really want to go in that direction. The way I'm looking, though, is the team total for Baltimore. So how many points are the Ravens going to score? The number's at 29.5. I think this team is capable of getting to 30. They're averaging about 30 points per game. Washington allows about 27. You got to imagine that bounce-back opportunity is going to come to fruition with Baltimore, and who better to take advantage of than against Washington.
Absolutely. I like the over as well. Still more to come on props and locks as we continue a look around the league. And a reminder, you can place your bets at betrivers.com or using the BetRivers mobile app. We're back after this.
Presented by BetRivers Sportsbook.
Welcome back to Props and Locks. I'm Caitlin Sharkey, joined by host of VSiN Rush Hour, Danny Burke. Danny, let's continue with a quick look at some other big games happening around the league today. The 2-1 Cardinals, lane 3 against the 1-2 Panthers, over under at 51.5. Danny, am I crazy to take the Panthers with the points here?
Well, Caitlin, you're not, because that's where all the sharps are heading. Like you said, this number was really around 3.5 for a majority of the week, but all of the bets, so more number of bets are going on the Cardinals. Despite that, the line is only ticked down a half, so it's ticked down a half in favor of the Panthers, meaning that the sharp money, more of the actual respected money, is going the way of Carolina. So I get it. I understand it. Carolina is still able to move the ball. Mike Davis has done a pretty good job of filling in for Christian McCaffrey, and we know the mobility of Teddy Bridgewater and what he's capable of. But at the same time, now that you're getting the Cardinals laying 3, I'm not betting this game personally, but if I have to have a lean, now that it's at 3, I would lean the way of the Cardinals a little bit. I understand it. I still have some faith in Kyler Murray and what the Cardinals can do offensively. I'm scared of what they can do or what they're going to allow defensively. So I respect the money that's going on the Panthers plus 3.5, but now that it's at 3, I would gander to lay it with the Cardinals. But once again, not going to make a best bet for myself. But no, you are not crazy looking the way of Carolina.
All right, good to know, good to know. Moving on to the Bills and Raiders. Bills at home as a 3.5-point favorite. Buffalo undefeated to start the season, only the 3rd time in franchise history, but I'm hesitant to go all in on Buffalo. Can we look at the Raiders when placing a bet here?
Absolutely, I think you can. Buffalo opened up as a 2.5-point favorite, went to 3, now it's at 3.5. One of the more popular picks in the super contest that you always see in Vegas. Everybody's going on Buffalo, and I think this is another good opportunity to bet on the Raiders at home. Obviously, the home crowd advantage isn't really a factor this season, but I still think it's that mentality that Gruden's going to implement, being a new stadium, defending it like they did against the Saints, and now you're catching 3 in the hook with Las Vegas. This offense is capable of keeping up with anyone, as we've seen thus far, I guess, excluding the Patriots last week. But really, this Buffalo defense hasn't lived up to the hype that we were expecting to see this season. I think taking the 3.5 with the Raiders is the move in this spot, Caitlin.
All right, Baker Mayfield and Dak Prescott coming head-to-head in Week 4. Dallas laying 4 at home, over-under at 56. With a game like this one, do you maybe look at a prop instead of going against the spread, or maybe money line?
That's exactly the way I'm looking at here, Caitlin. I'm looking at Baker Mayfield, number of completions, 23.5 at BetRivers is what he's posted at. But he hasn't even gone over that mark once this season. He's gotten 21 completions in the first game, then 16, and 16 again. So he hasn't even sniffed it close. Now, I know what you're thinking, going, well, the Dallas Cowboys defense sucks. It is brutal. The secondary is awful, but still, I think you're going to see Nick Chubb still being implemented on a consistent basis. And until Baker sniffs that territory, I'm not going over. So I like Baker Mayfield under 23.5 completions because anything can happen in this crapshoot of a game.
Absolutely. Our final game, the Jags and Bengals. Jags catching 2.5. The game is in Cincinnati, over-under at 49. Both teams 2-1 against the spread for the season. Do you like either one of these teams money line, Danny, or against the spread?
So, like you said, Cincinnati opened up as a 3-point favorite. We saw this number actually today go down to the Bengals laying 1.5. Now it's the Bengals laying 2. And I actually like Cincinnati in this game. Joe Mixon looked like he was going to be questionable. I believe he is good to go. So you're seeing sharper money go on the Jags, but Look, they got pummeled last week against the Dolphins. I know you don't want to rely on recency bias, but I think this is the game where Joe Burrow finally gets the dub. The Bengals have been struggling. His offensive line hasn't been helping him out, but I like Cincinnati to win this game outright. I laid the 2.5. I'd lay it obviously still at 2, or maybe if you want a little bit more security, just take the money line. You're paying a little bit more, but I do think Cincinnati gets the win in this event.
Yeah, I like the Bengals as well. And before we wrap things up, we talked about it earlier. Nick Foles making his starting debut for the Bears today, so why not have some fun with some Foles prop bets? What do we got, Danny?
All right, so Nick Foles today, his passing yards prop is at about 230.5. And look, we talk about Nick Foles' magic, and I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to rush and take the over, but the Colts rank first in DVOA in pass defense. They've really done a great job defending the pass so far this season. I would not look toward the over. This isn't something I'm actually going to be placing a bet on, but if you want to mess around with the props, I think the under 230.5 for Foles would be the move. Also, the number of touchdowns he throws today is at 1.5, about -112 each way at Bet Rivers. The Colts have only allowed opposing quarterbacks to throw for more than 1 touchdown in the first game of the season. That was Minshew Mania. So I would lean a little bit more toward the over with Foles. I think he can get it done in the end zone. You've seen Jimmy Graham be a big factor when the Bears get down to that side of the field. But once again, would lean a little bit to the over 1.5 for Foles, but under 230.5 passing yards, because that Colts pass defense has been pretty stout thus far.
All right, we will see where the magic is. And to kind of wrap things up, Danny, let's go through a quick recap of your best bets for this week.
Yeah, so like we always talk about, it's the teasers, and the Bears are in a prime opportunity. Short home and road dogs, if you tease them up, that has been successful in history when you're betting those. So the Bears are at 3. I did it when they were 2.5. So I did a 6-point teaser, which means you're getting 6 more points with the Bears. So I teased them up from 2.5. Now I'm catching the Bears at 8.5. So if they lose by a touchdown, I'm solid. But you have to pair it with another team, and the other team I'm pairing it with is the Green Bay Packers. Home favorites of about 7 and 8. You tease those down, also historically successful. So the Bears catching 8.5. You tease down the Packers from 7 to 7.5, wherever they're at. Tease them down below the key number of 3. That's one of my best bets. And the other one, like we talked about, the Bengals -2.5. You can get a -2 now. I think the Bengals get the win outright today.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Danny, and thank you for joining us on Props and Locks. Fox Kickoff Sunday is next.